Well, hopefully it's working on Facebook. I've never really used it before. Let's have a glance. I suppose,
Block on his.
yeah, I suppose a good idea is check your phone, see how it works.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll check my phone.
Yes. I always like how we play with new technology, not knowing what the hell it does.
Yeah, let's find out on the
Yeah,
day.
let's just do it on the day. It's so much easier.
I think you'd be quicker at it.
Yep.
Yeah, she'll be hooking onto it.
Quick.
We're working! Hooray!
Live.
I'm not the Luddite I thought I was. Anyway, welcome everybody to today's wine tasting or wine appreciation, hosted by the three wise men of wine, Pat, the novice, Dan, the knowledgeable one, and Andrew, the know-it-all. Today we're going to do actually my favourite wine, and I think yours too.
Yeah, I'm pretty hooked on it.
Pretty hooked on it. We love Chardonnay. Pat's getting into Chardonnay, so it'll be a good expression, a good thing to take on board for Pat to see what he likes and dislikes about Chardonnay. But so I'll just give you a quick rundown. Chardonnay originally, the grape originally was from France, particularly around the Burgundy area. You've got some major regions in Burgundy now. You've got Chablis up in the north of Burgundy. You've got the Côte de Beaune and Côte de Nuit in the north, Côte de Beaune in the south, going down to the Mâconnais and down to the Chardonnay. And all of those regions are very, very Chardonnay dominant. Chardonnay and Pinot Noir particularly. Chablis is actually pretty much just Chardonnay. But that being said though, it has been one of the what they call noble grapes, one of the 6 noble grapes, which have been world renowned. In fact, if you look at the growth of Chardonnay around the world, it's one of the top 6 grapes grown all around the world. It makes a plethora of different styles of wine. It's classically used in places like Champagne as a spine or a base of its acidity to bring forth some really lovely acid and some green apple notes to it. But we're looking at the dry still version of Chardonnay today, so not the sparklings. You can do a sparkling Chardonnay, or as it's known as a Blanc de Blanc. So we're going to have a look just quickly at Chardonnay. It's really interesting because it's sort of viewed as a bit of a winemaker's grape. Whilst the grape itself can be very expressive with fruit, it's got a good acidity, it's all about balance. And particularly, winemakers can really put their own stamp on it and their own region, and it's very terroir driven as well. So whilst you can have very lightly or no oak expressions of it, and you can play with all the tricks of winemaking can be added to it, and it can really give a signature style of the winemaker and the region. When talking about terroir, I was talking to a French winemaker who said that terroir is, when I asked him what terroir was, he said it was the soil, the wind, the climate, the vintage or the year that it occurred in, and the people that make it. And people kind of forget it's not just the soils and subsoils, but it's actually the people in that region who are making the expression of it. So we're going to look at Australian Chardonnay today particularly. So if you've downloaded the Chardonnay cheat sheet I put out, so it can be rich and buttery or it can be light and crisp. Obviously it can be sparkling, as we said, for champagnes. Generally it's fermented either in oak or stainless steel. Those fermented in oak, fairly similar all across the world. They use the same techniques. Top quality Burgundy is generally in oak. So it is native to France, grown in most wine regions around the world. It's best in cool or moderate regions, but maybe grown in warm climates as well. And Australia generally is a moderate to warm climate. If you're talking in true European levels, you're probably talking almost into a hot climate in some areas. It's very adaptable to conditions. They're highly influenced by winemaking styles. We can see high sugar levels to make high alcohol wines, and sometimes requires acidification. So all of the wines on display today that we will be having, I believe when I was looking at the notes for them, they say that they're not acidified, they don't need to, and that's coming from the classic regions of Australia. So we're going to be looking at the 4 classic regions of Australia. One is Yarra Valley. We're looking at Strathbogie region as well, which whilst is probably not regarded as a classic style, it's growing. Gippsland and Strathbogies are both becoming very well known and iconic Chardonnay areas. Adelaide Hills is always known for its Chardonnay as well, but it's also known for its Sauv Blanc and Pinot Grigio. It's actually quite a good white wine growing region. And Thompson Estate from Margaret River. So Margaret River is one of the classics Chardonnay regions. So I thought we'd just go through them one at a time and have a look. I'll give you a quick background of them as we go. So the first one we're doing is Tokar Estate. So Tokar Estate from Yarra Valley, founded in 1995 by Leon Tokar and his wife Rita, I believe her name was. There we go. So Yarra Valley is quite a cool climate. I find it to be quite a lovely region to get elegant Pinot Noirs, some really light aromatic style Cabernets and Shiraz, but Chardonnays for me is where it shines. So you've got famous areas like Coldstream Hills, etc. And these guys have got about 20 acres. 30 acres. 30 acres, but they might have bought more just recently. And this is their single vineyard wine. This is the 2016. I had a look on their website for the 2018, which they draw exclusively from a single site in the Coldstream Hills. So let's have a quick look at the notes for it. Winemaking of this, hand-picked, going to barrels, 500 litre French oak puncheons, fermentation using wild yeast, very little malolactic fermentation, time in barrels for given wine complexity and richness. So when you're looking at Chardonnay, warm climates will bring pineapple, guava, the tropical fruits. Cooler climates will bring much more citrus fruits like lemon, lime, green apple particularly. So green apple is what's called hard malic acid, and it can undergo what's called malolactic fermentation to turn that hard green apple acid into more of a milky acidity or lactic acid. So let's have a taste. Yeah, it's got definitely nectarines and sort of that nuttiness. You can pick up some of the vanillins from the oak. But what's your take on it there, Pat?
Yeah, I definitely taste the green apple, citrus. It's not as buttery as I've had some other ones.
Yep.
Yeah, it's, seems pretty high acidity though.
So the butteriness generally turns up in what's called malolactic fermentation, or they call it malo.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that turning from malic acid to lactic acid. That gives butteriness.
Yeah.
You'll find creaminess, when they talk about creaminess, is generally from the oak, and that's usually use of French oak particularly. You can use American oak in it, but it gets a little bit butterscotchy.
So can't really taste it. Is the oak like added, or is it through the barrel?
It's through the barrel.
Yeah.
So barrels are what basically brings oak in. What you can do for less expensive Chardonnays is you can actually add a whole different ways of doing it. Everything from a tea bag, literally a big bag full of oak chips dropped into the vat, or a lattice. You can actually construct an oak lattice, and I'll put that into the stainless steel as well. Or you can even get oak, oak vessels where they actually ferment it. So it's actually really, I find it just, oak integrating in is really it's a very subtle art. And what happened through the 80s is we went for bigger and bigger oak, and it got chewy, and it was like kind of like chewing on wood. And at that point, people turned away from it, and a massive crowd of people became what's called ABCs, or anything but Chardonnay. So they actually all started turning to Sauv Blanc, and that's where the Sauv Blanc explosion occurred. All the people that were drinking white wines for Chardonnays went to Sauv Blanc. They bailed out. But now, with that absolute devastation throughout the 90s, 80s, late 80s, early 90s, into the 2000s, it does mean that people that produce Chardonnay are producing good Chardonnay. It's not the mass-produced, cheap, oaked-up Chardonnay. It's either lightly oaked with a lot more balance to it, or it's a lot more oak but balanced off to the fruits and acidities that are required. You need to actually have a balance. Chardonnay is about balance, where you can have a really highly acidic style Albarino or Fiano, or what's it, MRV that I had recently. You do need the balance of acidity to fruit, balancing off to alcohol, to oak. All those things make a really structured wine. So that's the really important part about Chardonnay for me. This one's lovely. This is their estate range, so it's got that nutty nose.
Yeah, it's got no taste nothing as such.
Yeah, it's got that hazelnut.
Very lightly, delicately sort of oaked. It's not heavy.
From Yarra Valley, you expect elegance, finesse, delicacy, but it is punchy enough to get through for most food matches too. It's one of the ones that I really quite enjoy actually, and you know, it's crisp, crisp, dry, white, with just enough fruit to carry it over, enough complexity and nuttiness to actually make it really worthwhile to pay the money for.
How much is it?
On their website, I think they've listed it off at about $40 to $45. We sell it for a bit less here, but we won't tell them about that. But otherwise, yeah, I'd find it really lovely. It's a good little wine. So I was going to say, we'll sort of, this is in Victoria, so what we'll do is we'll go through the Victorian ones and then we'll move on to South Australia and then to West Australia, and we'll actually look to see not just if we can see what the winemaker's stamp on it, but can you tell the difference in regions? And it's always a really interesting thing because with a winemaker's grape, the tricks of the trade in wine are quite large. You can make wines taste fruitier, or you can more acidic. The additives that you can put in there are there's quite a few of them. So this one we're going to look at is actually a bit of a personal favourite of mine. It was presented to me by a friend of mine who's a wine rep. He actually said, "Oh, I met this guy. It's really lovely. You know, Joe Costanza, I think his name was. He said, oh, he's really lovely. He's a great guy. Try his Pinot Noir." And I tried the Pinot Noir and it was stunningly good. So over time I sort of sold a bit of the Pinot Noir, and I finally went to the Chardonnay thinking, oh, well, I'll give the Chardonnay a bit of a shot too. And I was really pleasantly surprised. And in fact, it's turning into one of our best sellers.
Yeah,
Here too. It is popular. And you can see just from the colour, there's a little bit more colour to this. It's more golden.
Definitely more golden than the
Yep.
last one.
So it's more oak.
Yeah. So this one is 100% barrel fermentation. So what that literally means is, so most Chardonnay is fermented in stainless steel and then transferred to oak to mature. This one has been fermented in the barrels, in the barrel itself, and allowed to mature the barrels.
Doesn't spend any time in stainless?
No stainless, no. So it's barrel fermentation and matured for 10 months. On top of that, new French oak barrels. So new French oak should give a very strong vanilla bean and creaminess to it. So let's have a look.
A lot rounder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably need to warm it up a little bit too. Any Chardonnay that gets cold, all you're going to get is the acidity and the really primary predominant fruit. Chardonnay warmed up usually to between 14 to 15 to 16 degrees. It's usually about where I'd like to see it because all of the esters and flavours and nose comes out a lot better. We'll just warm it up a little bit. I mean, on the nose, you're still getting that nuttiness, some vanillins, a bit of peach and nectarine on that one.
Peach.
And as you warm it up, the texture comes out too. You can actually get that sort of creamier texture. So Costanza and Son Chardonnay, 100% barrel ferment, matured 10 months French barrique oaks, in the Strathbogie Ranges, which is where I wanted to go to this year, but suddenly a virus broke out and we all got stuck at home. Luckily we get stuck at work and we can drink. So Pat, what's your quick review of it?
Yeah, I really like that one. It's not as high acidity as the last one.
Yep.
Yeah, creamy kind of mid palate.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's definitely from the oak.
Yeah. More like the nectarine and peach flavors. Yeah, I really like that one.
I like this one because you can actually ruminate on it a little longer too. You can sit down. The other one is a lot more quaffable for me. Like it seems to scream out, I want some cheese and some biscuits. This one just is a lot more, you can sit down and think about things a bit more. What about yourself? You're another Chardonnay lover.
Yeah, I actually like the crispiness of the first one.
Yep.
But this is definitely heading towards that creamy, mellow style that I do really enjoy.
Yeah. We constantly ask reps, can you get us a really, really good Chardonnay that we can sell for about $30 to $35 that's got full mallow and full barrel, and they look at us and laugh. Mainly because new oak barrels cost anywhere between $1,500 to $1,800 a barrel. So when you walk into those wineries and you see just rows and rows and rows of barrel, try to work out how many there are, multiply that by about $1,500 a barrel. That's how much they're holding in oak. And that oak can be far, far more expensive too. Like far.
I've used it so many times before.
Yes, essentially, from what I was told, it's 4 years. So first year you get a lot of oak character. Second year you get a bit of oak character. Third year you're really getting nothing but textural components. And the fourth year is builds texture, but is old oak. You're not going to get any major oak influence. After that, I have seen barrels used for up to 7 or 8 years in older wineries, and that's usually as storage vessels. But oak is not a great storage vessel.
No,
it's too porous.
Loose.
But I have seen it done. I mean, especially for ports and things like that, you'll see barrels there for 30 to 40 years, if not more. No, I like that one.
They don't really talk tannins when we're looking at whites and stuff. But
No.
surely there is tannins still in there.
There can be, but it all depends on if it's been on skins or not. So one of the processes for so tannins is a chemical that's actually in the skins, particularly in the black skins. You can get some tannin in white, but they have to be grey skin just to get that like colour to it.
What about the seed and the crush?
They try to avoid seed tannin because it's very bitter.
Yeah.
Same with stalk tannins. You might actually
be very gentle.
Yeah, they do talk about tannins for whites when you whole bunch press. So that literally means instead of just taking the berries off, you chop the whole thing, put it in and press it, and you get some stalk tannins. Generally not seed tannins because you don't want those crushed, so it's usually a lighter press. But you'll get stalk tannins in there, and they'll actually build some complexity into the wine. But they're usually used for higher acidity wines that generally are requiring some sort of balance for the tannin. And even the stalk tannins are a little bit on the bitter side. We don't talk about tannins so much for whites because the colour is where you're going to see most tannin. In a pink wine, you might have a little bit of tannin. Yeah, a little bit of grippiness, but that's about it. So no, not generally.
Yeah, I've never actually thought about it until
No.
recently. All grapes obviously have tannins.
Yeah. There's a few different techniques they do though. They actually, so obviously you can ferment in oak, and when you ferment in oak, I find you get a bit of what's called a struck match flavour. That's usually barrel ferment for me. Whether it is or not, I'm not sure. That's completely anecdotal. But if you start looking at other things, batonnage. So when I was in France, I went to one of the premier Chardonnay producers, and he actually said, I will show you this magical technique called batonnage, and I'll show you this amazing machine that we use for it. And he walked over to the barrel, took the top off, he reached underneath and pulled out a stick. And it's literally put the stick in, swivel it around, stir up the lees, because it's obviously got lees and skins in there. Stir it up, let it build some texture, that's it. So when it says batonnage, they're building texture not using just oak, but usually using the lees contact and the skin contact. So you may get a little bit of tannin through that, but it'll be very, very mild. So that's how, that's a really nice little one actually.
How much is that one?
Okay, I didn't look up their price online, but we sell it for about $30 to $35 here. I think $35. 35, I'm pretty sure. This is Costanza's Single Vineyard Chardonnay Kinship 2016. I really like that one. They've been a bit of a find for me. I really enjoy the stuff. They're Pinot, they're Reserve. Pinot is just stunning. And you know, buying Pinot in Australia, you're generally looking cheapest good Pinots I can find are about $15, and that's very few and far between. They're very ordinary generally, but there's a couple. Between 20 to 30, you find a plethora of good Pinot. But if you want great Pinot, you're looking at $30 and up minimum. My favourite Pinot Noir is about 70. I don't buy it very often, but that's about it. And this guy's Pinot about 35. Yeah, I'd put that up against easily a $60 or $70 Pinot. I think it's lovely. But their Chardonnay, that's excellent. On par with a $50 Chard. So yeah, I'm looking forward. Looking over.
Did you get the bingo going this week?
Oh, I missed the video.
No bingo cards.
No, I've been really not slack, but just got behind the eight ball. Hey, look, the whole point is I've got a new phone and I've been trying to set that up. That was a mission, an absolute mission. And learning new technology like Facebook Live, I don't know.
That worked.
It worked.
Did you start a watch party or something?
Yeah, no, I don't know about that. Sorry, man, you're saying words I just don't understand anymore.
Okay.
I actually have. We're looking to do a Zoom one next week. So yes, we have downloaded the app and we have got the little link ready for it. So I'll be doing a Zoom one of these next week. We'll upload that to YouTube and Facebook afterwards. All right. So now we're going to go to one of Australia's. I wouldn't say small, but well-formed producers. So Bird in Hand is not a massive wine company. It produces a fair bit. They got absolutely smashed in the fires this year though. They lost almost 70% of their white wine vineyards, I think. I'd actually have to find out the real numbers, but they really got hurt in Adelaide Hills. When the fires went through Adelaide Hills this year, they lost a heap of vineyards, which means their white production could be way down, but they have access to other producers that they're good friends with that they might be able to grape from. They're pretty renowned from their, I think is it their Nest Egg Chardonnay, which took out Australia's best Chardonnay about 3 years ago at the Melbourne Wine Show. These are pretty good producers from the Adelaide Hills. I for years looked at them and said, oh, they look really lovely and they tasted really nice, but just they were a bit expensive for me. But now I think the climate we're in, they are actually doing very well. The Chardonnay particularly, I mean it's a $40 Chardonnay, but I think it drinks excellently and we now have a client base that quite happily will look towards that for a special occasion. So anyway, I'll just give you a quick rundown on what they are. So Adelaide Hills, they're seaside influenced by the Gulf of St. Vincent, complements the cloudiness of Mount Lofty ranges. Climate and soil get credit for the gorgeous grapes, and it's their job to harvest them. They do that sustainably. There's a blurb about listening to the land, so we're going to skip that. They use clone selection methods, award-winning Chardonnays, selected from Burgundian. So they use Burgundian clones, which work really well in the Adelaide Hills. Texture is soft, creamy and mouth-filling, result of wild ferment and limited batonnage. So what they're really talking about now is that batonnage that I was talking about, that leaves stirring to build texture.
They don't use a stick.
Yeah, they do.
They've got a very big stick.
It's a very big stick. Yeah. So they're so Bird in Hand in Woodside. I actually haven't been to the Bird in Hand one. Peach, apricot, grapefruit, subtle hints of hazelnut, nougat, resulting in wine spending an extended time on yeast lees. Delicate flavours and lightness of acidity, slight chalkiness and restrained oak influence. So I'm going to guess, just from the tasting notes, you're looking at a 15 to 20% oak regime. So from 100% oak we just looked at to this one, which is probably going to be a lot less. But there seems to be a fair bit of batonnage stirring into it to build texture. You can tell from the colour, it's a little lighter.
Yeah, it's
a little more straw coloured rather than golden.
Nose is lovely.
Nose is really lovely. That peach and grapefruit is really good. Yeah, you can tell straight away. On the palate, you've got a lot more fruit presence. It's a lot more fruit forward. Not sweet, fruit forward. So a lot more of that peach with grapefruit. You've got a lot of textural notes building, particularly with like a nuttiness and nougat. I'd say, it's not overly vanilla, so there's not a huge amount of oak wax through it. The creaminess is nice, but it's not as creamy as this. But I do find the acidity to be much better balanced. I find this one is actually one you're looking at the acidity going, yeah, that's got some lovely balance to fruit weight. More impressive fruit weight or more forward fruit, you are going to need more acid to balance off. Now, as Adelaide Hills is generally viewed as a moderate, they call themselves cool, but in the world of wine, they're a really sort of moderate climate. They are going to be picking up a lot more warmth with their sun exposure, and they'll be picking up a lot more of that flintiness that you'll see in their soils that they get. Yes, that flintiness that they.
That's sort of getting a bit of like mineral.
Yeah, the minerality that comes through. So they need to have that. So I don't think it's acid adjusted. In fact, I'd put money it's not acid adjusted. It's very hard to tell an acid adjustment in wine, but I reckon this one is actually just naturally fermented. I'm not sure if they said wild yeast.
Wild ferment, I think they said.
Oh, okay. Did they say if it's wild ferment, then yeah, it would really be a. No, is that? No, I don't think it is wild ferment. Oh, no, it is wild ferment. You are quite right. So you can get some really interesting volatility from the acids when it's wild ferment, which is why wild ferment is a bit of a problem. It's for some, but obviously they've managed that really well. It's actually really funny. I talked to a winemaker, and he said, "Oh, yes, we talk about wild ferment all the time. Like we try to get the naturally the yeasts that are on the grapes when they're picked, taken into the winery, pressed, and left on their own without any addition of cultured yeast, will start to ferment by itself, and that's wild ferment." And I said, "Wow, how do you not get really, because wild ferments, there's a lot of different yeast strains, and ones that ferment really early can get some really unpleasant sulfuric sort of flavours to them." I said, "How do you prevent that?" And he said, "Oh, it's actually really, the initial yeasts don't get that, it's the later yeasts that will." He said, "But we just ensure that the wild yeast that is found in our winery is generally the wild yeast we want." So, it's sort of a bit of a...
So does that go by what you plant around your vineyard? Or?
I think it's more to do with the yeast that they used previously.
Oh, okay.
So in Australia, we tried to recreate sherry, which is all about the yeast, or what's called flor. And different sherry bodegas over in Spain have all different flor, because it's all wild, it's all in the winery.
Yeah.
But we've actually had Australian winemakers go over there with a plastic bag and just scrape off some of the...
Trying to pick up
some of the leaves. Now bring it back to Australia and just let it go free.
Culture.
And that's how they're culturing their...
That's how the coronavirus.
Yeah, well, no, they weren't eating bats. But yeah, so essentially that's how they build a flor in their winery. And I should imagine yeast are pretty much the same.
It's a bit like you're exploding a beer keg in the
Yes. Story for you. So we had an exploding beer keg in the fridge one day, and we cleaned up as best we could, and we sort of left it, never thought about it again for a while. And about a month later, Dan comes out of the fridge going, "That's disgusting!" And we had to go back in there and start cleaning furiously with chemicals.
Yeah, there was just this beer yeast growing everywhere. On the backs of the wine bottles, on the shelves, on the wall.
The worst part was, a couple of months later, we actually had brewers who were saying, "Oh, I wish we could get some yeast up from that." It's like, "Oh, we just cleaned it all."
What was that? Modus, wasn't it? Or...
No, that was Sierra Nevada. The Hoppinator, I think it was.
Hoppinator.
Yeah,
It was very strong.
It was, yeah, very yeasty. So, Pat, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like it. It's
It's a lot more subtle, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It lasts a bit longer on the tongue, I think. Yeah, it's a lot smoother. It's not as high citrus, like green apple and things like that.
Yep.
I actually can see like a little bit of kind of banana nearly.
Yeah. So that'll come from a warmer climate.
Yeah, but I didn't think it'd be I thought South Australia would be a bit cool for that. Or
No, South Australia is remarkably warm.
yeah,
It's kind of, if you look at South Australia, it is a very warm area, but it's moderated by a lot of cooling Arctic breezes. And there's a current that comes up near Coonawarra that's actually mitigates Coonawarra particularly, but the further inland you go in South Australia, the more the climate becomes more continental, and you get a lot more of the cooler climates coming in. So the higher altitude and a cooler climate come in, but yeah, it's hot. Essentially, I think if you look at the latitude of Barossa, it's equivalent to the latitude of North Africa.
yeah.
So you're looking at warm climates particularly. That's northern and southern. But I actually find it quite good.
I like it. I think it's quite warm. I suggest it's quite high in alcohol for white. But
I would probably say that you're wrong. 13.
I think it's more.
You think it's more? What's to say? Just have a quick glance through them. This is well written. I can't tell. 8 standard drinks. 13. There you go. What's that one?
700 mils, whatever it is. 13.5.
13.5. So no, it's not really.
I'm getting quite warm for it.
Are you sure it's just not 3 Chardonnays? And again,
I'm
you're
pretty sure it's not.
You're feeling nice and warm. Yes, feeling warm about that.
Enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
it's
still looking for that big button.
Yeah.
Slap in the face.
Yeah, that's one of those ones. I love it too.
It'd definitely be a good like middle ground between like people who don't like Chardonnay though. Like a lot, I can see Sauv Blanc drinkers drinking it a bit easier.
Actually, yeah, because it doesn't have that.
The first one, I think Sauv Blanc drinkers could move to quite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's still a fair bit of. Yeah, it's got crisp and dry, but it's a lot. It still has oat component.
Yeah.
And mind you, there's been some absolute stunning Sauv Blancs in what they call a Fumé style, which are oat. Michael Hall does a stunning one.
Yeah.
I mean,
What
an
doesn't he
absolute.
do?
Yeah, it's true. If we're just out of Michael Hall's Chardonnay at the moment, but I'm about to buy some more from him. But his, for me, is probably one of my favourite Chardonnays of all time, really. That includes the field blend.
Yeah, the one that's
The field blend. Yeah, that's bizarre.
got like 7 different white grapes.
Yeah, literally, it's a field blend. It's like, we've got these ones over here. Let's all make all these white ones together.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, now we're going to go on to Thompson Estate in Margaret River. This lad. What do I say,
This
lad?
is what they do.
This is what he loves and what he does well. He does his Cabernets exceptionally well too. So Peter Thompson. So Jade and Peter Thompson, they purchased the estate in 1994 with the first plantings of Chardonnay and Pinot in 1997. The 1998 was Cabernet, and then they put new plantings of Burgundian clones in to a total of 20 hectares under vine. I know Peter personally, he's a lovely guy, cardiologist, so not exactly dumb. But I think his work ethic and what he does, and the time that he spends. I mean, like, you're working 4 days a week as a cardiologist, and then going to do work, like, thinking of retiring to a winery is not what you should do. Retirement plans are to relax, not to actually work harder. But Pete decided he wanted to work harder.
But he's doing that age-old trick, taking a large fortune and turning it into
The small fortune, yes. That's what winemakers do universally, is they take enormous fortunes and actually turn them into smaller fortunes. Our boss is a prime example of that. So when I was talking to him about his Chardonnay, I expressed that I loved big oak, big mallow, and he went, it's not what I like. So Margaret River was classically, and using basically Pierrot and who's the other big one that I like out of their art series? Lewin Estate. Yeah. So they used to be all about 100% malolactic fermentation, 100% barrel age, barrel ferment. Now they have pulled right back over the last 20 years to make it into a 30% French oak, usually a minimal malolactic fermentation. So where I steered myself away from liking WA or Margaret River Chardonnay, I've come back to it over time because I've found that the oak that they use, as well as the bit of mallow that they put in there, is actually making the wine more complex, more integrated, and far more consumer friendly, which I think is great. So Pete's written on here that pale medium straw, brilliant clarity, subtle green edge, lifted peach and nectarine stone fruits, lemon lime citrus, that usually ticks a good box for me, cinnamon clove spice with hints of nutmeg and nougat. It's a wild ferment funk, so others have used wild ferment again. Gives richness to the nose, rich and vibrant palate, soft, seductive, creamy texture, so they have used at least 20 to 30% French oak. White stone fruit flavours, as well as integrated subtle oak, persistent, tight, seamless, acidic lines, result in a crisp, clean, captivating finish. Let's have a look. Well, he's right with the colour for starters. Oh, that's that Margaret River nose.
Yeah. Bubble gum for some reason.
Yeah,
Just really subtly, but not sweetness bubble gum. It's,
yeah, it's that hubba bubba sort of thing.
yeah.
Ooh, a lot more of the lemon lime in that one than we have seen in the others. Which, coming out of the maritime sort of climate that Margaret River has, a little bit unusual for me.
Not getting much at the back. It's all sort of
It's all at the front.
it's phenolic almost. It fills my nostrils and everything with the first mouthful, but then it disappears off the back just to a dry, crisp sort of finish.
This is his estate range Chardonnay. He has one above it called the Specialist. I was going to wrangle a bottle of that out, but it would be just head and shoulders above everything else we're drinking today. So
it wouldn't be a fair comparison.
Not really.
Totally the same.
no, we're trying to keep a bit of a fair comparison. But you can see, like, even inside the state, you can see that the winemakers make two different styles of Chardonnay. And that is pretty classic of Yarra Valley Chard. Going into Adelaide Hills, I can see the winemakers are putting a stamp on that, but again, the fruit and the acidity and the minerality certainly define itself as a different region. But this one, it's got that typical Margaret River. Like, you stick your nose in it, and you get some touch of salinity. You get saltiness, and then you get that punchy fruit, which is kind of what Margaret River is pretty good for. Is that good punchy fruit, but balanced off to some really lovely winemaking notes.
I'm starting to get a bit more through to the back.
Yeah. Again, probably just a little bit cool, but it's
Tight.
yeah, it is.
It dries your mouth out quite.
Yeah, it's quite crisp.
Yeah, it's got some crisp flavour to it as well. Crisp acidity, sorry.
And some cheese with that.
Yeah. It's a shame we don't have a shop that has cheese.
Yeah. And the camembert that needs to be eaten.
Oh, we do need to get the camembert
I took
too.
one of those yesterday to Jason's.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's still past its best by, but it's still good.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt quickly, but vermouth. Where would I find
Vermouth.
Vermouth.
Vermouth. In the spirit section on the bottom shelf.
Yeah, Rosso
Oh, got you.
and extra dry and
So if you're wondering what we sell vermouth as well. Actually, if you haven't been to Purple Palette, come on down and have a look. This is just our little tasting where we do things in. We've got a plethora of... So I actually had a guy come in today with the... And I'm pretty sure it was what's his name? The Whiskey Aficionado's book. And he was going through our whiskies. He wasn't very talkative. And I said, can I help you find something? He goes, no, I'm fine. He kept looking. And he finished looking up all the whiskies that we had on our shelves. And he was there for quite a while because he was trying to relate them to each other. And he began to walk out. And as he walked out, I said, we also had ones behind the counter. At which point he stopped and spent another 20 minutes looking at the whiskies, going through the book. So we have a massive range of stuff. But
what did that noise mean?
that meant our battery's low.
Fair enough.
So it looks like we'll be finishing off our live stream rather shortly. But thank you all for tuning in. So what are we going to do next time?
we should do some out there odd varieties.
Odd varieties? Yeah, I'll get that. Yeah, we might look at a little bit of Carmenere, Nera Diabla.
Oh, and reds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People have been asking for reds pretty much heavily, but I might throw a couple of whites in, some Fiano, some Anise. Alejandro.
This customer came in the other day asking for one. I had to Google it, but I'll have to re-Google it because I've forgotten what it's called now. But
Okay.
it's like Novice or something. It's a
Samson.
Samson.
Yeah.
They grow it in Hunter Valley.
Yeah, Hunter Valley grows it. Sounds like Shane's been in. He's the one that was a massive lover of Samson.
Yeah. We haven't had any before.
No. It's a red grape that makes a lighter red style wine. One of the wineries around here at one point was using the Samson for sparkling.
Yeah.
But Hunter Valley is the only place that I know in Australia that does it.
I'd be interested because what I read on when I googled it was someone from the States was over and said that the Hunter Valley actually does one of the best
Samsons as well.
Samsons in the world. So I was like,
Yeah, well, Samson's only really found in France and in Australia.
the States are doing it as well.
Oh, are they? Yeah, they're usually Zins or all the Zinfandel. But anyway, till next week, we're going to sit here and finish these bottles because we can. But until next week, good luck and drink like a savvy.
Cheers.
Cheers. What's next?
You turn it off.
I have no idea. This is one of these things.
Having a heart attack.
You want to turn it off?